Good afternoon, and welcome to The Big Show. The Big Show comes at you every single day. We talk about all kinds of different topics with respect to Pittsburgh sports. The Big Show brought to you by FanDuel Casino, also by Archie's on Carson Street. So we will talk a little bit more about FanDuel a little bit later. But right now, we will talk about the Steelers' next opponent, the Browns. I can honestly say this. I've been covering sports, 35 years now. Something like that. 32 years, 33 years, something like that. I can honestly tell you, I can never remember a time when a team has so thoroughly screwed up like the Browns have with their quarterback situation. I mean, it is almost mind-boggling how bad they are at this. Now, you could all make the argument, you go all the way back to Baker Mayfield. You know, he had won a playoff game for them. He wasn't healthy, but he got healthy again, and they decided that even though they used the number one overall pick on him, that they were going to move on from him because they wanted to try and get Deshaun Watson. Now, here's what I'll say about that. When they were trying to get Deshaun Watson, he was still considered the big prize on the market. He was still considered the guy that, hey, all these teams were trying to get. Because if they could get him, and you look at what he had done in Houston, you were getting a young, really good quarterback in his prime. So I don't know that I necessarily hold it against the Browns that they went so, hard after him. But it clearly has not worked out for them. I mean, he's a guy that is just sort of not a guy that I would tell you I don't know that he has on any level worked out for them. He's been hurt. When he wasn't hurt, he didn't play well. He was suspended for a portion of his first season in the Browns. It's been a disaster. And obviously when you trade all the picks they traded for him and you do all the things that they did in terms of signing him and giving him all that guaranteed money, I mean, it's going to hamstring you for quite some time. And that's what's happened here. Deshaun Watson is sort of the elephant in the room that they don't know how to deal with. It's what it comes down to. Honestly. They just don't know what to do with him. So I feel like it's now become an issue where, okay, you come into this year and you know that you're going to have Deshaun Watson hurt. I actually did not hate them signing Joe Flacco. I mean, he's a guy that, you can have a little bit of success with. Then they drafted two quarterbacks, including one who's so high profile and everything else that it becomes a distraction. They traded for Kenny Pickett. They spent most of training camp giving Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco all of the reps in training camp with the first team and even in the second team. Then they traded Kenny Pickett away. And, they've tried Bailey Zappi and Tyler Huntley was another guy they brought around. I mean, at the end of the day, they've had now, 7 quarterbacks? I mean, if you count them, 7 quarterbacks from training camp or from mini camp till now. They've had Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Shedeur Sanders, Dillon Gabriel, Bailey Zappi, and Tyler Huntley. 7 quarterbacks is what they've had. Okay. They start with Joe Flacco. He doesn't play very well. They feel like, okay, it's time to turn the team over to Dillon Gabriel. But instead of keeping Flacco around as a insurance policy, they decided to trade him away too. So the two guys they gave all the reps to in training camp are gone. and you've got two rookies who you probably could have used all of training camp to give them a bunch of reps and bring them both along. Okay. It appears now that they at least have the plan that, well, we're going to see what Dillon Gabriel can do, right? And they're going to go forward with him. But then today, there's this bizarro world press conference with Kevin Stefanski where he says he's not sure who the backup is. It might be Bailey Zappi instead of Shedeur Sanders. And then he goes into this long-winded thing about, they're bringing along Shedeur Sanders and all that other kind of stuff. Okay, I guess. I don't understand what they're doing. I guess that's the problem. So, in short, the Steelers play the Browns this week. We know that it'll be Dillon Gabriel who will be starting. And it's entirely possible that Bailey Zappi is going to be the backup, with Shedeur Sanders, the third guy that's inactive, the emergency guy or whatever. So I would say this. If Dillon Gabriel works out, it will be, I guess, on some level worth it because you will have your quarterback in place for the next, 8 to 10 years. But if Deshaun Watson comes back and now you're going to try and put him back into the lineup, I just don't know that this makes a whole lot of sense of what they've done here. And again, I think when you look at how they've handled the entire situation, I can't think of in 30 plus years, I cannot think of a better example of a team, an organization, a coaching staff, a front office, whatever. I cannot think of a better example of how you can screw your entire franchise up by completely mishandling the most important person on the most important player on the field. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. They have made a total mess of this, and they're getting killed for it, and as they should, because it just has been a complete silly, Ferris wheel or whatever you want to call it, merry-go-round, and now it's landed on Dillon Gabriel. We want to see what he can do. Now, last week, he probably played well enough for them to beat the Vikings, but he still, they still haven't scored 20 points yet this year. And I think that's probably significant. They probably have not, necessarily gotten to a point where, their offense is good. And that's where, you look at him and you just have to ask yourself, what is he going to be, is he going to be able to, now take the next step, come play in Pittsburgh, which is not exactly an easy place if you're the Browns to come play, a hostile environment, and the Browns really don't have a backup plan. The one backup, I think this is his, third team in one season, I think. It was the Bengals that cut Bailey Zappi, and before that he was somewhere else and they cut him or whatever. But nevertheless, Dillon Gabriel was 19 of 33, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, which is good. Only averaged 5.8 per pass, 94 rating. Again, he was probably good enough. And if he gets better and he starts to grow and we start to see him become, what looks like a competent quarterback week after week, well, then I guess if you're the Browns, you can say it's been a long, strange road, but here we are. We finally have a guy that we think might be our guy of the future. I guess. I think right now, going into the Steeler game, it's really kind of setting up very well for the Steelers. They are going to benefit from the fact that they actually have a film on Dillon Gabriel playing, an entire NFL game, starting and playing an entire NFL game. Now they have film of it, and that's usually what changes from week 1 to week 2 when a first time or a rookie, guy starts. That's usually the difference. Week 2, the team has a little bit of film on them. And so the Steelers, they usually are pretty good at exploiting these young quarterbacks. They're usually pretty good at, forcing these young quarterbacks and all that other good stuff. I think that's the key here. The key here is the Steelers probably are going to have their way with Dillon Gabriel. That's my prediction. Will he complete a few passes and maybe make a few plays? Yeah, probably. I'll be shocked if he has any real amount of success. I'll be shocked. Because to me, I think that this week has been so weird for them up there. And then you had Kevin Stefanski talking. We had, Kevin Stefanski talking today about how, the Joe Flacco trade was completely a surprise to all of them. And I mean, it's like, do people talk to each other up here or what? I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be real interesting to see what happens, but I will be shocked if Dillon Gabriel has some sort of success against the Steelers, even to the point where I can't see a scenario where the Steelers lose this game unless they have a game like the Patriots did the other day where, they turn it over 5 times or something silly like that. I think that's where it really becomes interesting because, the Steelers really, this is a game, if they win, they probably put a little bit more distance between themselves and the rest of the division. And so that's where that is. And I think that's the most important thing when you think about it. It just becomes sort of if you're the Browns, I mean, you need Dillon Gabriel to work out. I know there's a lot of people that want to see Shedeur Sanders get his chance, and maybe he will. But if you're the Browns, you don't want that because that would mean that Dillon Gabriel failed, and that would mean you're on to your 4th or 5th quarterback. And then again, like I said, Deshaun Watson, it sounds like it's going to be coming back. If you look at that quarterback situation, I think it plays well into the Steelers' chances of winning this game. I mean, stranger things have happened, I guess. Again, they could turn it over 5 times or whatever, or Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, whatever. Things can happen. I get it. But all things being equal, the Steelers should win this game and actually probably win it with relative ease. Now then, one interesting development with the Steelers is Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth is a guy that they signed in the off season. They gave him a nice contract extension, and he's in year 2 of it. It's 5 years, $52 million. This is year 2. And here is the thing. If you look at it, he's played fewer snaps this year than Darnell Washington and Jonnu Smith. So he's played just, 49. This is good. Jerry Dulac. He's 49.8% of the offensive plays. And in the last game they played, he only played 15 snaps against the Vikings. And so that's, last year he played 76% of the plays. This year he's less than 50. Some of that is because Jonnu Smith is here, obviously. And he wasn't here last year. Freiermuth was the guy. Now he's probably the second guy. And they put in Darnell Washington, and he basically said, hey, you can't play 4-3 teams with a 250-pound tight end. So when the edge people are 300 pounds, you better have somebody out there that looks like that animal. I think it's unfair to ask guys like Pat Freiermuth and Connor Heyward to block 4-3 ends. I just don't think that's realistic, he says. It's not realistic if you want to have a real good run game day. So it's really important that you look at Pat Freiermuth's skill set. And the thing is, if they want to be good at running the football, guess what? He needs to play a lot less because he's not a good blocker. He's not a good run blocker. He's okay. But he's not really good. And so that's just what it comes down to. And I think that's where you look at Pat Freiermuth and you say, well, they signed him to that deal, but when they signed him to that deal, they had no idea that they were going to bring Jonnu Smith in. So, that's a part of it. Do I think that it'll change some? Probably not, to be honest. Probably not. I think what will happen is, probably what will happen is we might start to see him even less. Now, less than 15 snaps would be tough. But if you're playing against a team and you're trying to run the football and you don't want to have to, continue to change your personnel, if you want to have the same personnel out there for passing plays and running plays, it can be really difficult to find a spot for him. On obvious passing downs, of course you put him in the game. But if it's a 3rd and 6, which could be a running down or a passing down, do you want him out there? Do you want Jonnu Smith and Darnell Washington giving you the option to run it or pass it based on, whatever they're going to do? So that's where I come down on Pat Freiermuth. Mike Tomlin explained it pretty well. It's one of those situations where a guy's skill set might not mesh 100% with what the Steelers are trying to do on offense. I do believe he's a good pass catcher, though. I do. But I do think he is, a guy who is very one-dimensional. And if you're one-dimensional in the NFL, especially where you play a situational position like tight end, guess what? If you're one-dimensional, they find guys that maybe have more than one dimension. So that's where we're at with respect to Pat Freiermuth, honestly, in my mind at least. He's a guy that is, I think, a good player, just probably doesn't necessarily fit or align with all of the goals of the Steelers offense right now. Now, again, sometimes they might play teams that are in a 3-4, and it's probably a little bit different. But, as Mike Tomlin said, when you've got a 300-pound edge rusher out there in a 4-3, you have to have somebody that can block him. And his, what he's saying basically is Pat Freiermuth is not the guy to do that. Darnell Washington is. Right? Jonnu Smith isn't like a great blocker, but he's better than Pat Freiermuth. So you've got those two guys. Connor Heyward, again, I think he's probably more value as a special teams player than anything else. And now that you have Jonnu Smith, I mean, if you didn't have Jonnu Smith, Connor Heyward would be a third guy. There'd probably be some more snaps for him. But being the fourth guy, who's more of a special teams guy, I mean, I think that's just where it is when it comes to their tight ends and what they're trying to do. It makes perfect sense. If you're trying to run the ball, I think it's honestly, if you're trying to run the ball and be a team that runs with physicality, that's what you want to do. So that it makes perfect sense to me. By the way, there are 4 Major League Baseball games on today. All of them are basically elimination games, right? I mean, because one team has, 2. It's a best of 5, and one team in each one of these games has 2 wins. So, there'll be a few teams that might clinch today. The Tigers are actually right now up 7-3. If they win, it staves off elimination, and there will be a game 5. Milwaukee is up 2-0, so if they win, the Cubs are done. But go to your FanDuel app, and of course, FanDuel Casino is one of our sponsors. We thank them all the time. If you go to your FanDuel app and you're looking to bet a little bit of money on your baseball games, well, Toronto is plus 150, which means they are actually underdogs against the Yankees in New York. It's a game 4. The Blue Jays lead the series 2-1, and this has been a game where the hitters have absolutely dominated. All of the games have been high scoring, and if you look at it, I mean, that's really kind of an interesting dynamic because today, well, the over/under for this game is interesting from this standpoint. It is only 8.5. Yesterday, I think it was 10.5 or something. It's 8.5 today. Now, why is that interesting? Well, here's why. They have basically, the Yankees have Cam Schlittler on the mound. And if you remember, Cam Schlittler last week absolutely was dominant when he pitched against the Red Sox in the wild card round. Had an incredible start, actually. 8 innings pitched, struck out 12. It was his major league debut, his major league playoff debut. He was really, really good. So you wonder, does he have that kind of magic in him again? If you watch the kid, he throws it really hard. He's got good location. He's kind of got that good mentality of pitchers. So, it seems like the Yankees probably should be favored. You have to bet 180 to win 100 on the Yankees on your FanDuel app. For Toronto, you bet 100 to win 150. But the interesting number to me in that game is the over/under, just because I think that Cam Schlittler is a guy who is a wild card. If he's on, it's going to be really difficult, I think. If he's on, it'll be difficult for the Blue Jays to make anything happen offensively. And if that happens, we're talking about an under. The other game, the Phillies and the Dodgers. Dodgers are up 2-0 in that series. They are favored, obviously. If you were going to look at the odds on your FanDuel app, they are favored 185. So you have to basically lay $185 to win 100. And then if you want to bet on the Phillies, you have to bet 100 to win 155. Over under 7.5. This series has been a little bit lower scoring. Part of it is the Phillies they've just not been great with their offense. But 7.5 is what it is. I happen to think that game, it's in LA. I happen to think this game will be the game. If I was going to bet it, I would bet the Dodgers, because I think it's going to be lights out for the Phillies. But anyway, all of that you can find on your FanDuel app. Go ahead to FanDuel and make your bets. Now, we go forward. The Steelers had a couple of injuries that have popped up that could be, at least a little bit of a factor on Sunday. The major one to me is Jalen Ramsey, just because he's your most important player at your most important position. Jalen Ramsey's got a hamstring injury, and of course, he's not going to be participating in practices, but they're hoping that aggressive, quote unquote, aggressive treatment will lead to him being able to get on the field. Without him, I think it changes their secondary completely, obviously. And it is going to be very interesting to see because Joey Porter Jr. is supposed to come back. So if he comes back, I don't think that he's as good as Jalen Ramsey. So you lose something, but you don't lose nearly as much. If he doesn't come back, then it becomes a real problem. Then you're probably happy you're playing against Dillon Gabriel. The other injury that I think is a little bit interesting is Alex Highsmith is probably going to be back. And what do you do with Nick Herbig, who's been a big, major factor? When he started playing, it really, he became a high-impact player. Do you put Alex Highsmith in, back in, and he gets the majority of the reps, or did Herbig at least earn half the reps? That's going to be an interesting decision that has to be made. The other thing is Calvin Austin could be out, and if he's out, will we see a lot more of Roman Wilson? Roman Wilson's a guy we heard about all during training camp and, everything else, but he's not been able to get on the field really. If Calvin Austin's out, they probably will need to play him. So these are decisions that are going to have to be made, to be honest, by Sunday. Obviously, as Mike Tomlin says, we'll let their preparation during the week be our guide. But I'm just telling you, I'm looking at it and saying, I think you got a real chance to have a dilemma with Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig. And I also think not having Jalen Ramsey changes a lot for their defense. So to me, I think those are the things that you have to take a look at if you're going to look at what they're actually trying to do in terms of who's healthy and who's not. We talked a little bit about Joe Flacco because we were talking about the Browns and their ridiculous quarterback situation. The Bengals this week play at Green Bay. And the Bengals obviously are a team that they're really reeling right now. And why did they bring in Joe Flacco? Because Jake Browning was horrific in the few weeks that he played, after Joe Burrow got hurt. He was not bad, horrific. So they brought in Joe Flacco hoping that he can basically just figure out a way to win a few games until Joe Burrow gets back. It's interesting to me because Joe Flacco can't move anymore. Joe Flacco is old and can't move anymore. And to me, when you got a guy like that, okay, and you put him behind an awful offensive line, it has the potential to be a disaster. And I think that's what is happening here with Joe Flacco. You're putting him behind a line where he might get killed. I mean, I understand what the Bengals are trying to do, but I thought maybe there was a couple of other guys they should have looked into, and they apparently did not look into any of them. Russell Wilson is what he is, but he's better than Jake Browning. I think even Jameis Winston. Now, he plays for both teams, but if you want to jumpstart your offense, he's obviously going to jumpstart your offense. He might throw 3 picks, but he also might throw 4 or 5 touchdowns. I thought one of those guys would be a legitimate, guy to go get. Might even think about Mason Rudolph, to be honest. I don't know if the Steelers would trade him, but to me, he's better than what Jake Browning is. I mean, there's some guys out there, I think, if you look around the league, there are a few guys that are available that maybe they should have tried to pursue before Joe Flacco. I understand why they went and got Joe Flacco. I think that it's one of those things as, Joe Flacco is a veteran. He obviously sees the field better than probably Jake Browning does. And I think he does a pretty good job of getting the ball to the right people. So I just I like it, to be honest, because I get and I understand it. But I also wonder, when you think about it, if you really think about it, I don't know how it makes sense behind that offensive line. I would have thought they would wanted to go out and maybe try and get, another guy that's maybe a little bit more mobile. Obviously, one guy that would fit that bill would be Russell Wilson, although he looks like he's done. And the fact that he lost his job to a rookie in New York, probably, I would say. It's just, to me, Flacco is a guy that is, I guess, familiar. He's familiar with the AFC North, but is he really a guy that's going to help you win? I don't know. I just don't know. So we'll see how that all works out. Baltimore obviously is reeling right now. No Lamar Jackson. I would say this is probably one of the most important games of the last 4 or 5 years for John Harbaugh. They play the Rams in Baltimore. They've got to figure out a way to win the game. Can't be, they can't lose. They lose, I think it puts them in jeopardy of probably not making the playoffs. But they need to get it turned around and hope that Lamar Jackson's able to come back next year and the next week, and then he can start doing his magic, and hopefully they can fix whatever's wrong with their defense. But to me, this is a huge, huge game for them. Game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street, Archie's, home of 80-cent wings. Monday through Thursday, it's the home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down to Archie's and tell Archie I said hello once you get there. We'll do it again tomorrow. And then, of course, Adam and I will be on after the game on Sunday. We will wrap it all up for you. Until then, enjoy your night.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.